Hi, my name is Emma Cameron, and this presentation is a part of the RDOS Noxious Pests program, which has the goal of educating residential tree fruit growers on their responsibility to prevent and control insect pests. This video is a part of a series that highlights different fruit types and the different pests that anyone with a fruit-bearing tree or shrub may come into contact with. These videos are available to anyone that is looking to educate themselves on fruit tree care and insect pests. The Okanagan-Similkameen is home to one of the best growing regions in the country, with an abundance of farms, orchards, and vineyards. Farmers in this region gather and sell their produce at local markets 8 months of the year, providing a bounty of fresh produce. But some of us still want to grow our own food, whether that be for helping children to learn about where their food comes from, or just the simple satisfaction of being more self-sufficient. But this comes with a responsibility that should be known before you consider planting a fruit-bearing tree or shrub. Fruit tree growers are responsible for preventing and controlling insect pests that can not only damage their own plantings, but also neighboring growers that largely depend on fruit productions for their livelihoods. Extra time, effort, and money will be required to adequately care for your fruit tree to not only avoid harmful insect pests, but also to grow fruit that is an optimal size and flavor. Although I will be referring to trees in this series, it should be known that this refers to any plant material that supports fruit production, including berry bushes and grapevines. Also, although this video series is focused on the pests and the bylaw in the Regional District Okanagan-Similkameen, most of the information provided is applicable to other nearby regions and even throughout the province of BC as a whole, as general fruit tree care is applicable to anyone thinking about planting a fruit-bearing tree or shrub, and many of the pests discussed threaten fruit plantings beyond the Okanagan-Similkameen. The videos in this series will provide tips on general fruit tree care, pest management as a whole, and the specific pests and diseases that affect different fruit-bearing trees and shrubs. Before planting your fruit tree, or even if you have just inherited a fruit tree during a recent move, it's important to understand these 5 essential tasks before taking it on. The most important thing is to understand the RDOS bylaw that is on the RDOS webpage for fruit tree pests. It states the responsibility of the homeowner to prevent and control insect pest infestations, and explains the steps that occur if there is a complaint about your fruit tree. This is important to understand because if there is any negligence to general care and pest prevention, an insect infestation can affect the livelihood of neighboring commercial orchards. Once you understand this bylaw, you should next ask yourself what the reason is behind planting a fruit tree. If it is for decorative and ornamental purposes, there's a plethora of beautiful ornamental trees and shrubs at your local nursery that will be a much better option, and at a fraction of the cost. And to bounce off that, you must also be prepared to invest more time and money in order to avoid pest infestations. This will include diligent sanitation practice, effective pruning, ensuring the soil nutrition is adequate, and proper harvest practice. Next is a very important step, that is research. Do the research on your specific fruit tree that you're wanting to plant and understand its planting requirements and its susceptibility to pests. Once you have done this and you're at your local nursery or garden center, ask questions to the employees and suppliers so you can thoroughly understand what you're getting into. To prevent insect pests, these strategies will be essential in your fruit tree care routine. Sanitation is by far the most effective way to prevent pests. This includes keeping a clean ground cover, consistently removing any dead or rotting fruit and leaves, and having a consistent weeding routine. Pruning is a skill in itself, and research should be done before you tackle this. It should not happen in cold temperatures, as winter injuries will welcome pests and disease to your tree, and your tree should be pruned significantly each year to promote light and air penetration. A simple way to avoid certain pests is thinning your fruit to singles. Most families and homeowners do not need a whole tree's worth of fruit, and thinning will ensure your fruit size and flavor is optimal. For apples, they should be spaced about 6 inches apart, and pears should be spaced about 8 inches apart. This last way to prevent pests is very simple and will work very well, and that is bagging your fruit or your entire tree. For apples and pears, you can place horticultural bags or plastic bags if you're unable to find these. Place the bags over young fruitlets and leave them on for the whole growth process so pests don't feed or burrow into your fruit. Netting the entire tree is also a very useful strategy to prevent many types of insect pests. This is the basic outline for an integrated pest management strategy. When you first think you may have a pest problem, following these simple steps will help in diagnosing your problem. First, you must identify the pest type and if it is a common and severe problem in the Okanagan-Similkameen. For example, the very common codling moth gets out of hand very quickly and requires immediate attention, whereas something like mites is very common in this area and a fruit tree can handle low numbers without any damage. Second, you must determine how severe the damage is. You must ask yourself if the tree will be severely affected and may die if immediate intervention is not done. You must also take into account the likelihood of spreading and how invasive it is. For example, the apple maggot should be something that's frequently looked for, even though the Okanagan-Similkameen is free of this pest, as it's known to decimate crops in areas close by and must be reported immediately. Thirdly, you must determine what your plan of action is. If you decide that intervention is necessary, always use the least toxic control method possible. Using chemical intervention is typically not necessary for residential plantings and can sometimes do more harm than good by removing the beneficial insects that are keeping the pest in check. And always consult professionals if you're unsure about what to do. Codling moth is a major problem in the Okanagan-Similkameen and should be checked for regularly. Larvae are small caterpillars that burrow into the flesh of apples and pears and tunnel through the fruit to get to the seeds where they feed. Adults are rarely seen due to their nighttime activity, but look like fairly typical moths with a distinct copper spot on the end of their forewings. The best way to diagnose this pest problem is by surface stings or entry holes filled with frass, which is the insect's excrement, and the tunneling can be seen if you break open the fruit. To manage this, you can place corrugated cardboard banding on the trunk, which traps overwintering moths and is the easiest at-home method. Contacting the Okanagan Kootenai Sterile Insect Release Program will also be an important step in your pest control. This is a relatively new pest in the Okanagan-Similkameen, and there needs to be continual checks to make sure there is no indication of the apple clearwing moth. To minimize the spread, there should be no movement of fruit trees, rootstocks, or applewood from infested areas. These pests do the most damage in their larval stage, as they burrow into the bark anywhere below the crown area up to the branches. They love to enter the tree through wounds, grafts, pruning cuts, burr knots, or any other physical damage points. This will cause swelling and frass will build up at these areas. Adults are not seen often but are quite distinguishable in appearance, with their blue to black body, orange stripe, and clear wings. The damage seen includes swelling, as I previously mentioned, as well as weak limbs, poor fruit set, early leaf drop, and even entire tree death. If you think you have the apple clearwing moth, you should first report the damage to a crop advisor or plant health lab to confirm its presence. And then to prevent it, you can minimize wounds to the trees and remove any trees with cankers. You can also make homemade traps with grape juice, but you have to make sure that they get cleaned out regularly. There are various types of leaf rollers, but they are all pretty similar in appearance and damage. The larvae are light to dark green with a black head and can be often found inside curled leaves. Adult moths are rarely seen due to their nighttime activity, but have dark bands on their wings. The damage is seen by rolled or chewed leaves and rusted or corky scars that are from feeding holes. To manage this pest, you can significantly prune back the tree to remove any egg masses present. Also, leaf rollers like to enter fruit in protected areas where there's 2 or more fruits in contact, so by thinning the fruit to singles, this will prevent infestations. The apple Curculio most notably affects pears in the Okanagan-Similkameen, and is distinguished by their large grub larvae and small weevil adults with a long snout for feeding, as well as how they play dead when disturbed. There is often feeding puncture damage that is accompanied with pustules and circular depressions, and fruit deformation that often gets worse with growth. To manage this pest, you can use sticky traps to detect if there are adults present, and you can remove cherry and Saskatoon berry bushes, which are breeding hosts that attract this pest. Other pests that you may see in apples and pears includes rust mites, pear leaf blister mites, and persilla in particular, all mostly occurring in pears, and the spotted lanternfly, brown marmorated stick bug, and aphids in both apples and pears. Although some of these have yet to be a problem in the region, they have the possibility, particularly the spotted lanternfly and brown marmorated stink bug, to decimate fruit crops. Pests and diseases can sometimes go hand in hand, where pest problems can weaken the tree and welcome diseases, and vice versa. Powdery mildew is a common disease that should be frequently checked for and pruned out as needed. Two other common diseases are apple and pear scab and fire blight, both of which are becoming an increasing problem in the Okanagan-Similkameen and can lead to substantial crop losses. Now that you know all about your responsibility to prevent and control insect pests, I hope that you weigh all of your options before deciding to plant a fruit tree. With extra time and effort, a fruit-bearing tree or shrub in your backyard can offer healthy and delicious fruit, but you should speak to your local nursery or grower supply staff about what to expect before purchasing the tree. They are highly knowledgeable and can offer additional growing and pest avoidance tips and answer any of the questions you may have about growing fruit trees in your local region. Growing a fruit tree is time-consuming and typically requires extra money to care for if you want delicious fruit with little to no insect pests. But you can also leave all the work to the professionals and support your local farmers markets instead. This is a good option if you are not willing to follow general care tips to prevent pests or spend the extra money to do so. Before we go, it is important to also remember that everywhere in BC is bear country. More than a quarter of all black bears in Canada live in BC, and here in the Okanagan, bears have come into conflict with humans in all parts of the region, even in the middle of every community, town, and city. Often these bears are lured in by unsecured garbage and attractants like fruit trees, berry bushes, and backyard fowl. Caring and maintaining your home-raised food sources goes a long way to having a pest-free, bountiful harvest that you get to enjoy while keeping wildlife wild and community safe. For more information on pests that affect different fruit trees, there are fact sheets available on the RDOS website that are available to anyone considering planting a fruit tree and are organized by fruit tree type. These are some important contacts and links that you should have readily available if you're considering planting a fruit tree or already have one. There are two links that you should read on general care and pest management tools here that are extremely helpful and are important reference guides. The apple maggot has yet to reach the Okanagan-Similkameen, but has decimated crops in nearby places and is expected to reach this region eventually. You should frequently check for this pest and call this number and ask for a plant health staff at the Canadian Food Inspection Agency so proper control can occur. If you have any indication of brown marmorated stink bug, which also affects apples and pears, and it's potentially disastrous in the Okanagan-Similkameen, you should report it online or contact Susanna at the BC Ministry of Agriculture.